Pfizer is suing Novo Nordisk for trying to steal its company. Intellia is in trouble. And the FDA, the world's most annoying roller coaster. This is big drama in big pharma. What's up, nerds? I'm Maddie C, and I make all kinds of videos on the happenings in the world of drug discovery. And although I usually focus on the technical details of different academic papers, the pharma world has been absolutely insane recently, and I think you'd all like to know the tea. So let's start with my personal favorite news of the week. Pfizer suing the absolute balls out of Novo Nordisk for trying to buy the company that Pfizer is going to buy. Now, there's some history to this drama, so let's back it up a little bit. Meet Metsera. They're a relatively small pharma company that has a very wide portfolio of very eye-catching obesity drugs. And they are catching the eye of, well, every pharma company because of how competitive the obesity drug market is. Think of all the different GLP-1s you've heard in recent news, right? Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, etc. So back in September, Pfizer submitted a bid worth $4.9 billion to acquire Metsera and all of the drugs that they own. The money nerds at Metsera said that wasn't enough, so Pfizer bumped up their bid to $7.27 billion, expecting Metsera to say yes and give him a little kiss. Until a month later, when Novo Nordisk came in and submitted a bid worth $9 billion. Now, this is a bit of a sneaky move, but Novo Nordisk, like Pfizer, has been struggling a little bit in this newly competitive obesity drug market. They really wanted to retain their crown. Meanwhile, Metsera, who doesn't really give a damn about all the pettiness, but does love to see a bigger number on paper, tentatively says yes to Novo's bid and goes in for the kiss. Now, Pfizer was understandably pissed, and so they brought up two different lawsuits to Novo and Metsera of breaching the terms of the original deal as well as fiduciary duties. Pfizer also claimed that Novo's counterproposal wrongfully interferes with the deal and is asking the court to temporarily block Metsera from terminating its contract with Pfizer while the case plays out. Pfizer even went as far as calling Novo's move a anti-competitive conspiracy, which honestly, when they put it like that, makes them sound like huge dorks. But in their defense, even the Federal Trade Commission said that Novo's deal had high legal risks, which practically forced Metsera to reconsider the whole thing and go back to Pfizer. At the end of it all, Pfizer had to up their bid to $10 billion, an offer that Metsera couldn't refuse and one that Novo couldn't back up. Because nothing says new love like a potential lawsuit and forcing your wife to spend an extra $2.5 billion. So in my opinion, it's obviously not great for Novo to kind of fuck with the law like that. You know, it's right on the borderline of being legal or not. But you've got to admit, it is objectively hilarious the way that they forced Pfizer's hand like that. It almost immediately soured the relationship between Pfizer and Metsera, and makes Pfizer look like a bunch of stinky little babies. Either way, great entertainment, lads. Well done. In less fun but equally scandalous news, Intellia is in hot water after one of their patients has passed away during one of their phase 3 clinical trials. The whole timeline looks something like this. In early 2025, Intellia started a phase 3 trial to treat transthyretin amyloidosis with cardiomyopathy, which is a heart condition that is caused by misfolded proteins produced in the liver. Through a number of downstream biochemical processes, prevents regular blood flow and heart function, which then causes significant strain on the heart. So Intellia's treatment makes an LNP, or a lipid nanoparticle, and puts in a gene editor, something like CRISPR-Cas9. This LNP then shuttles the Cas9 to the liver, which chops up parts of the TTR gene and regulates the amount of this TTR protein in the liver. With regular amounts of protein, you have regular heart function. And they claim they can do all of this with just a single dose, something that they were very excited to bring to the masses. Now, on September 30th, one 80-year-old man was dosed with this nanoparticle drug. But on October 27th, almost a month later, he saw dangerous increases in certain liver enzymes. Basically, his liver was screaming for help. Just over a week after being hospitalized on November 5th, this patient has passed away. And these adverse events were so severe that despite already enrolling 650 patients to this trial, Intellia paused it until they could figure out what the problem was. And though it's always tragic when a patient dies during a clinical trial, while receiving the thing that was supposed to be helping them, the timeline of it all paints a pretty complicated picture. This man was quite elderly and, according to his attending physician, had a lot of complicated comorbidities even before the trial started. This is kind of supported by the fact that these increased liver enzymes were seen a month after his initial dose. It's quite well documented that over 95% of nanoparticles are delivered to the liver within the first 24 hours. So usually if it was a problem with the treatment itself, you would see these after just a couple days. So to the dismay of many conspiracy theorists, most experts don't think it was the CRISPR-LNP that was causing the harm. Now, I've seen some experts saying that maybe the CRISPR editing part of the drug just edited too much and was too stable, potentially affecting the balance of other liver enzymes while getting rid of that TTR protein. And although they're doing the right thing by pausing the study, Intellia's stock price has absolutely plummeted since this incident, down by almost half since the story broke. It'll be interesting to see what Intellia does next to approve a drug that otherwise showed a lot of promise. Switching gears a little bit, this next segment is something called Things That Piss Me the Fuck Off. AMT-130, a promising new drug that everyone was expecting to be the first ever FDA-approved drug for Huntington's disease, did not get approved by the FDA, despite showing it could slow the progression of the disease by 75%. The absolute kicker is that the FDA didn't approve it because they didn't like their study design, which was approved by the FDA less than a year ago. More specifically, the FDA is upset that UniQure, the company that makes AMT-130, used a database for Huntington's disease in their very small phase 1, phase 2 clinical trial. Now, there's two main issues with the issues that the FDA has. One is what we just mentioned, is that less than a year ago, they said this database would have been perfectly fine study design. And two is that Huntington's disease is a very rare genetic disorder. And with no other treatments available, literally the only ones are to manage certain symptoms, it's really hard to establish a good placebo when there are very few patients that have a very high mortality rate. UniQure just wanted to use a database. And rightfully so, the CEO of UniQure is incredibly confused. They were completely blindsided after having many discussions with the FDA over the year. And many experts are worried that this might be the nail in the coffin for AMT-130. Okay, like here's an example. Like imagine you are gunning for a promotion at work. And so you go to your boss and you say, hey, I would like to take that next step. What can I do? And they say, hey, come to get some coffee with me every single day for the next little while. We'll talk about career development and what else you can do and, how else you can use your skills or whatever. But then when it comes up to get that promotion, your boss says, no, you didn't get it because you're a freeloader who drinks too much coffee and kisses my ass. Like, pardon me, this was your idea? Excuse me? Anyways, I hope the FDA figures their shit out because the way that they've gone about it is detrimental to UniQure. It's going to take them longer to get this into patients. They've taken a huge market hit, so they might not be able to finance the next clinical trials. And it's incredibly confusing for anyone trying to get their drug approved, right? Like they listened to everything, they did all the steps, they showed really good data, but the FDA still says that isn't enough. So I don't know, man. Add to the list of ways that the FDA is dumb these days. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about this drug, I did make a video on it. You can learn about the mechanism and just how effective it really is. It's not free of criticisms, but it is very, very promising. So go and check that out if you're interested. Speaking of the FDA finally figuring their shit out, they've hired a new director of the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, Dr. Richard Pazdur. Having been at the FDA since 1999 and being the head of the FDA's oncology division since 2017, Dr. Pazdur is often referred to as a renowned regulatory innovator for his work in making life-saving oncology drugs get to patients sooner. Some experts are even saying that he's arguably the most qualified candidate in the entire healthcare ecosystem for this role. Now, I don't know the guy, I've never heard of him, but on paper, he seems like the perfect fit, which is also ironic because everything about the FDA since Trump has taken over earlier in the year has been an absolute cluster soup. So it's good to see that there is some stability going on in the FDA. Now, there was some juicy drama leading up to this decision because George Tidmarsh, who was Richard Pazdur's predecessor, resigned after only being in the role for 4 months due to serious concerns about his personal conduct, notably for talking shit about a pharma company on social media, likely because the chairman of that company fired Tidmarsh from his old company. Basically, Richard Pazdur is that stable, boring guy that you date after a sociopathic menace absolutely breaks your heart. Now, he might think that mayo is too spicy, but hey, he makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Good luck, Dr. Pazdur, and Godspeed. And building off that, I want to end today with the most positive news we have out of the FDA. A new roadmap to get personalized therapies to the clinic much faster. Here's the deal. Called the Plausible Mechanism Pathway, this new framework is designed to help accelerate treatments for serious conditions that are so rare they may only affect individuals or handfuls of people that can't feasibly be tested in randomized clinical trials. And personalized therapies have been near impossible to develop for two main reasons: time and money. Two things that pharma companies don't want to spend a lot of if the patient population is too small, because usually they're not profitable enough. But if this new roadmap is successful, it will take less time and less money to develop these individualized treatments, and therefore incentivize, or at the very least de-risk, pharma companies from making these treatments. The FDA specifically cited one success story as a major contributor for this roadmap. Baby KJ Muldoon was treated with a personalized CRISPR-LNP earlier this year to cure his rare genetic liver disease. See, Intellia, we believe you. And researchers at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia diagnosed the disease, made a personalized RNA and LNP formulations, got preliminary FDA approval, and gave 2 doses of the drug in less than 8 months. This is less than the time that it usually takes people in the FDA to move a stack of papers from one VP's desk to the other. What does this plausible mechanism pathway actually look like? Qualifying treatments need to be directed at the known biological cause, like a molecular or cellular abnormality of a disease. Drug developers must have well-characterized historical data showing how the disease might impact patients if left unchecked. Companies must also confirm via biopsy or preclinical tests that a treatment successfully hits or edits that target and improves the outcomes afterwards. The FDA then went on to say that they will initiate an approval process for these developers that meet these objectives in several consecutive patients with different bespoke therapies. And basically, once showing that this therapy works, the companies must then accumulate evidence showing that it continues to help the patient without causing serious harm or negatively impacting this person's development. So yes, it does kind of look like it's a little bit based off of vibes and friendship. It's a lot of these things are what every clinical trial looks at anyways, but if I'm being honest, at least the FDA is recognizing it and they want these things to move faster. So you can get these individualized, better treatments to patients faster. Now, this all comes with a very big asterisk. This is all assuming that they are equally as diligent with this faster pathway as they currently are. So they're not just speeding things up because they're not looking at things as carefully. If they are able to stay diligent, that is a very positive step forward. But if they're only accelerating things because they're getting lazy or because they're understaffed, not all that good. Fans of the channel will know that I already made a video about the baby KJ situation, but before you watch that, please, for the love of God, go and watch the video that Chop put out. They interviewed the Muldoons and the scientists who made this treatment happen, and honestly, it is one of the most moving videos I have ever seen. I looked like the baby with how much I was crying. A link to that beautiful video and all of the articles that I've referenced today down in the description below. Feel free to check them out if you're interested in learning more about any particular story. And while you're down there, feel free to give this video a like if you liked it, and maybe even subscribe if you don't want to miss the next time there is big drama in Big Pharma. But that's all for me today. Thank you all for stopping by, and we'll see you later, nerds.